Welcome to the week that was. April 19th, and it's a bumper one. Julius Malema sentenced, we've got a new ambassador, and refugee news is everywhere from Russia to the States. We start with Julius because everyone and their dog has an opinion.
As the EF just say, and they were actually just a highly edited, even here in the proceedings every day. They could have went to go and watch it on TV and not come here and editate, but that's the audacity of whiteness. And as the EFF, it's not going to happen, and we will not tolerate it.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
AfriForum saw a landmark victory against the racist terrorist Julius Malema. Julius Malema in 2018 fires a rifle into the air in a crowded space in the middle of a township. This is reckless endangerment. Originally, the NPA, which is basically just the government's prosecuting arm, refuses to prosecute. It is then AfriForum that threatens the NPA with a lawsuit of their own that finally gets the NPA into action.
I was wrong, and I could never be happier to be wrong. I told you wouldn't go to jail. I said it directly. I said I don't believe in this justice system. I said it on Truth Report and on my channel. I said, thank those stars. Thank God if he spends a night in a cell. I said they would give him a fine and a handshake and a rub on the shoulder. I said South Africa doesn't have what it takes. I said South Africa doesn't have the balls. I said South Africa doesn't have a justice system. It has a justice suggestion. I was wrong, and I'm so happy I was wrong.
It shows us that the wheels of justice do turn, even though they turn very slowly. And even though it took 8 years of constant fighting and pressure by AfriForum to ensure that they kept turning, today we have reached this verdict. It shows us that no one is above the law, and that politicians and those with political connections need to realize that they are no more important than any other ordinary member of the South African public.
And I agree, no one is above the law. Perhaps now we can see movement. A 2.5-decade-old case in the arms swindle for Jacob Zuma, or perhaps the 168 counts against Zandile Gumeda, or the Wyatt dairy farm scandal, or Ace Magashuli's asbestos tender, or Dr. Zwelin Kizi's Digital Vibes corruption case, but it's gone nowhere. Or perhaps even, if no one is above the law, a consequence for money laundering, currency evasion, and allegations of police abuse, kidnapping, and torture in the Palapano episode.
But that was not the law. That was racism speaking.
Well, there you have it. On some level, it appears that justice has been served. However, as the Commander-in-Chief Malema himself has said, this is clearly because the judge herself is racist. And let's see, how did the EFF respond to this, to the sentencing, to this verdict?
Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. I repeat. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa. Brr, pa, pa. Attention.
Is there any real surprise there? Violence, attacks, riots, calls for killing the Boer, for killing the farmer, for killing the Afrikaner. All of this we knew was coming and would happen anyway. For all of you in South Africa, please remain safe. Please keep me updated and posted as to what's going on in South Africa post the Malema sentencing to his 5 years in prison.
Afrikaner sellout, Rolf Meyer, gets the US ambassador position. Now the spin starts.
Propaganda campaign has begun. It's in earnest now, folks. The efforts by legacy media in South Africa to put lipstick on a pig with the appointment of Rolf Meyer as ambassador to the United States. Now, I'm not here arguing that it's a bad pick. It's one I disagree with, but I understand why Ramaphosa did it. He's a known, and what better to have in DC than someone that you don't have to worry about having political ambitions, and someone who is at the end of whatever career they may have had, and someone who is unlikely to step on the crank. So it makes sense, particularly in light of the race hustling committed by Ibrahim Rasool. 13 months later, we have an ambassador. But News 24, pretending to be a legitimate news organization to run news stories, runs a puff piece opinion disguised as news, talking about an analysis and comments from different analysts around South Africa and the US about what a great pick this is, and completely missing the point.
This appointment came as a surprise for a number of reasons, but perhaps most notably the fact that just last year he openly and publicly said that he considers himself too old to be appointed as US ambassador.
I don't think somebody of my age should take on that responsibility at this stage, quite frankly. Like Abraham Rousseau was just saying, you know, it's something that demands every day very hard work in DC to get to the different think tanks, to get to the lobby groups, to work the corridors of power, Capitol Hill, State Department, etc., etc. And that demands, I think, youthful energy.
Now, Meyer, at the age of 78, has been appointed as the new South African ambassador to the United States, at exactly the most sensitive, key, and most complex time in this country's strained relationship with the US. And, in all honesty, it's hard to imagine that Ramaphosa, who knows about all of Meyer's failures and is familiar with all of his many weaknesses really, truly believes that Meyer will succeed at this post.
Washington will accept his credentials and he will become the ambassador here. There's no justification for not accepting him, and I have no problem with that. But he will be inconsequential and have no impact, except in the Tea Party caucuses of leftists who hate Trump, who gather in little institutions like the Brookings Institution. That's the only influence he'll have.
It might be better for people not like me to have that debate and have that discussion.
These people have no idea what they're talking about. They don't understand American politics. They don't understand geopolitics. And it's distressing to see that they get paid. They have a salary for spewing nonsense. What say you, South Africa? Mzansi? Cheers.
Errol Musk's Russian refugee scheme. It's like a car crash you can't look away from, but with more vodka and questionable life choices. Strap in, Sugar Plum. This one's going to be a bumpy ride.
Well, the latest news is South Africa's ANC may begin to have more difficulty gaslighting the world. That's right, folks, because they keep denying President Trump's refugee program for South Africans. South Africans, not for white farmers. That's a lie perpetrated by the likes of CNN and other media outlets. It's not true. It's for South Africans. And as you've seen on my program with interviews of white, colored, Indian, and even a few black South Africans who've come over in this program suffering from racial persecution. But now Errol Musk is pushing a program to relocate Afrikaner farmers to Russia. The idea is to send up to 50 families to the Vladimir region, which is located east of Moscow. Now, never mind how cold it gets there in the winter. If they want to go, more power to them. But Russia taking on South African refugees? But I thought there was no problem in South Africa. Now, the French press agency AFP broke this story, which has since been picked up by at least Business Insider and the Africa Report. But I need to share that this is hardly something new. Afrikaners have been emigrating to Russia since at least 2018. What is new here is Errol Musk's involvement. What is not new is mainstream media propaganda. Or is it just plain lazy? Afrikaners are not descendants of Dutch settlers. They are an admixture with more German origin than anything else. Many have little to no Dutch ancestry. So, lazy journalism or just more lies? Now, this false assertion is not news, but rather opinion masquerading as news. No matter how many times ill-informed leftist race hustlers tell their lies, the reality is that South Africa has 145 racially discriminatory laws. Now, folks, if Vladimir Putin is aware or involved in this effort to take South African refugees, it could spell big trouble for the ANC, which continues to gaslight the world, pretending that it is morally acceptable to impoverish people based on skin color, as if that right's a past wrong. The ANC has a sycophantic attachment to Russia. They kowtow and fawn all over Moscow. Pretoria and Moscow have close ties that date all the way back to the fight against apartheid, when the Soviet Union provided support to the ANC, trained Dr. Beetroot, among others, to become a practicing medicine woman. Certainly not a real doctor. Also, they trained and equipped the armed wing of terrorists known as Umkhonto we Sizwe. If, in fact, this is genuine and not simply a publicity stunt by Errol Musk for a handful of families, if Russia opens up a refugee program for South Africans, well, how can the ANC deny it? Their friends in the BRIC countries are taking South African refugees. The jig is up. The show is over, as the judge
said, or the prosecutor said to Julius Malema today, the show is over.
For South African refugees engaging with the United States Refugee Program, Donald Trump has reiterated that he still acknowledges their situation, reaffirming his stance, keeping the issue present in the political conversation, and bringing renewed attention to the broader debate under a more focused national spotlight.
This is huge news, especially for Afrikaners who are here in the United States attempting to go through the asylum process, but also for all of my Afrikaner refugee friends who are still in South Africa, because as you know, as you're all aware, many of you feel forgotten. Many of you have been concerned, even though both Colonel Wyatt and myself have told you there's no need for concern about the refugee program being canceled or being stopped come the midterm elections. But that's kind of what we're going to talk about.
And under my leadership, we ended asylum fraud. We ended all catch and release. We stopped third world migration. We suspended all refugee resettlement except for persecuted South Africans. They're being persecuted. In South Africa, there's a very horrible thing going on in South Africa. It's a genocide. It's a horrible thing. And we made it possible for these people to come into our country. They kill people if they're white, if you're a white person. And I'll tell you what, I did great with the black vote, the African American vote, and they understand this better than anybody. South Africa, they kill white farmers. And we said, you come into our country and we let you come in. You get a green card and you get a passport. You can stay in our country.
Of course, in the past, he has said it's not just farmers. We know that, but he was speaking off the cuff here. But the point is that he acknowledged, the President of the United States acknowledged, that there is an active genocide of whites, people of white European descent, Afrikaners, and other whites in South Africa. And we know from his directive to create a refugee program that he also believes this persecution, this genocide, affects other ethnic minorities in South Africa as well. And I have not held back from using the term genocide because I do not believe there has to be government-sanctioned murder in the streets for us to call a spade and say there is a genocide. There is absolutely a cultural genocide of Afrikaners and other whites in South Africa. There is calling for genocide in South Africa. And Colonel Wyatt published this short a little while ago. It's one of the reasons I told my family I've got to come in here and make a video today. But you can see I haven't even buttoned my collar. I was trying to get as fast as I could get in front of the camera. You know, and he said that even if you don't acknowledge this, even if you don't agree with President Trump, there's something clearly wrong that you refuse to acknowledge in your country. If you want to use the term persecution, if you're too afraid to use the term genocide, that there is persecution, there are levels of harassment that goes above discrimination, that goes above harassment, the U.S. government official legal terms for these definitions for these terms, it reaches the level of persecution, or as President Trump says, genocide. It is the fact that the government is not acknowledging it is just adding fuel to the fire and proving that we have been right from the beginning.
South African situation is very, very dangerous.
Hey you, staring at the screen, looking confused. I see you. Behold, Be Patient, the official drink of South African refugees. That rainbow can of pure, concentrated patience. To survive the refugee grind of persecution and endless waiting, nothing beats a case of Be Patient. Stand the test of time with Be Patient. Perfect for lasting longer than ANC SOBs or Julius and his economic freedom fuckers. Deadpool out.
But then you get the September, October, November group that seems to be forgotten. I get emails daily with screenshots of Church World Services just sending generic answers to people saying, no, there's nothing to report, it's in USCIS's hands or whatever it is, and just being ignored. They've never responded to any of my emails or queries, and they're leaving people hanging out to dry in a situation where a program exists to save your lives from persecution, but you're stuck in the country where you're being persecuted because Church World Services is dragging their feet.
That in itself is cause for concern. No refugee has a right to come to America. We're not demanding that. No refugee has a right to demand anything from the U.S. government or the taxpayer. That's not the argument here. But this program is running, and these incompetent actions bear scrutiny and oversight. And if USCIS isn't going to answer these questions publicly and continue to be opaque, and Church World Service is going to continue to fail to do its job contractually, it is time for congressional oversight into what is happening here.
I've been standing on the edge now of a life I barely know. Every step I take forward feels like letting go of hope. I've been drowning in the silence when my voice used to be loud. Now I'm screaming through the pain, but I'm still not backing down. Even when my heart is weak, even when I'm out of breath, I haven't given up yet.
Don't give up, hey, when the world says no. Don't give up, hey, let your courage show. Through the tears, through the fight, through the endless night, you're stronger than you know. Don't give up, hey, let your spirit roll. Give up, hey, you were made for more. When the dark won't move and you got nothing to prove, you got fire in your blood.
Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't
You're not done.
But in the United States, we leave no American behind. We don't do it.
Absolutely.
Chris Wyatt, guiding new arrivals through the sacred ritual of paperwork survival. Get your social security number fast, or risk being trapped in the eternal nightmare known as pending status?
The Social Security Administration for refugees, you can apply for a Social Security number the day you arrive in America. However, the Social Security Administration advises against that. They caution that you should wait 10 working days, or as many refugee agencies are telling recently arrived refugees, 2 weeks, because weekends, 14 days. So 10 working days. And the reason for that is when you arrive, you are pending approval, and then USCIS processes you in the system, and within those 10 working days, it should update the system. But if in fact you've gone to the Social Security office and you've got an appointment and you've done it before they have that approval, or you give them a copy of the I-94 that you arrived with, that says pending approval. If the people who process your paperwork don't follow up or go any further, you're never going to get a Social Security number. Now, I don't know that this is the case, but based on that anecdotal information, plus information I received from other cases around the country, it would seem plausible that's what's happening here is that the initial paperwork is correct, that you're not approved, that you're pending approval, but you get approval within a number of days, up to 10 working days, 2 weeks. But someone didn't follow up. Now, I don't know that to be the case in each of these individual cases, but it makes sense. So here's a pro tip for refugees arriving in the United States. If you're not getting a Social Security card within 6 days after applying for it, going to them, contact them, go back, and ask them to pull up your I-94, which they can do in the computer, and see if it says approved. Or you can have your refugee agency pull it up and compare it to the one you had. If it says approved, the previous one didn't, well, there's your problem. Well, and the fact that somebody didn't follow up at the Social Security Administration. Does that help? Now, I don't know this is a foolproof solution, but what I'm suggesting is that you try it for those struggling to get their Social Security number sorted. There's no reason the Social Security Administration can't get you a Social Security number within 6 days. I mean, a computer assigns this thing. It's not rocket science. It's not like they have to go out and chisel it out of stone and hand it to you. It doesn't work that way. Even though they've gone through a drawdown last year themselves, they're not that short of personnel. So there you have it, folks, based on a conversation with the refugee from South Africa in Las Vegas, and my own analysis based on anecdotal information from here and data from there, and my own analysis, I believe that to be the case. So let's see. Give it a shot. If you can't get a Social Security number, you've been waiting weeks or months, well, get your current I-94 printout and make sure it says approved and take it back to Social Security Administration or ask them to pull it up on their computer. All right, best of luck, folks. No one should be waiting a long time for Social Security cards. It's a detriment to success for any refugee from any country. You can't work legally without it, and you're not a person. You need a Social Security number, and you shouldn't be a victim of bureaucracy. I hope this helps. God bless.
And that's it, folks. Another week survived, barely. Same chaos, different headlines. Try not to panic, or do. I'm not your mom. See you next week.